You are listening to Skin, Earth, Vitality, the podcast where ancient wisdom meets modern vitality. If you are seeking to reconnect with your innate vibrancy, you're in the right place. I'm Emily Davis, a seasoned holistic esthetician and herbalist. Join me as we unlock the secrets of ancient skincare practices, explore the beauty of seasonal and nature-based living, herbalism, and true holistic well-being for you and the broader ecosystem. Please remember that the information I share in this podcast is based on my personal and professional experiences and is intended for educational and informational purposes only. It is not individualized skincare advice, nor is it medical advice. I encourage you to take charge of your own health decisions and listen to your body, seeking out the resources and professionals that best support your wellness journey. Hey there, and welcome to episode 31. The topic that I want to get into today is hyperpigmentation. At the time of this recording, it's the end of summer, and I know that hyperpigmentation may be more visible for many people, so it could be something that's top of mind, wondering what to do about it. This episode is for you if you are currently experiencing hyperpigmentation, if you are interested in preventing it, or I know that I have many fellow estheticians who listen in. So if that's you and you want to learn more about my approach, welcome in. Today, I want to talk about what hyperpigmentation is and what causes it. I'm going to get a little bit technical because I really, think it's just fun to imagine what's going on below the surface of our skin at a very microscopic level. But I also think it's really important for you as the consumer to understand what's happening so that you're not just picking up a brightening product and hoping for the best. You're actually understanding why you're buying specific products or why you're doing different modalities. So I will also be talking about different modalities that can be incorporated to reduce and prevent hyperpigmentation. I will talk about products. I'm also going to talk about lifestyle and how that can affect hyperpigmentation. And of course, I'm going to get into the emotional aspects as well. As always, I'm going to be looking at this through a holistic lens, and I hope that you enjoy. So, what is hyperpigmentation? It's one of the most seemingly mysterious and challenging skin conditions to work with because skin pigment is pretty complex and multifaceted. Melanogenesis, which is the production of melanin or pigment, isn't taught, in my opinion, very thoroughly in aesthetics school. And so I feel like a lot of estheticians, the people who are there to be the expert, feel like they're at a loss for what to do. And I feel like it's quite common, even for estheticians, to just grab a brightening product and hope for the best. And that's what we want to avoid. We want to move into this very intentionally. So melanin, that pigment that our skin produces, is part of our skin's defense system. It's a defense mechanism designed to protect the nucleus of a specific skin cell called a keratinocyte. So most of your skin cells are these keratinocytes, and melanin enters the keratinocyte to protect it from trauma. That's its purpose in life, is to protect our skin from injury, from DNA damage. So what happens during this melanogenesis? Again, the process of the production of the pigment. UV exposure, so sun exposure, is a trigger for this melanogenesis to occur. And it must also be noted that a certain amount of UV or sun is vital for our skin and for our overall health for so many reasons. The sun is our life force. It is something that we have been living in harmony with since the dawn of time. I'm a big fan of what I call intuitive sun exposure. So I am never going to be the person telling you you should be wearing SPF all day, every day, and hiding from the sun. You should wear SPF unless it's dark out. I do not agree with that vehemently. And instead, I think that you're actually smart enough as the consumer to use your intuition, to work with your intuition, to understand that sun exposure means getting healthy amounts of sun. And also, you're smart enough to understand how long is too long in the sun. Then you can begin seeking shade and covering up before you begin to burn. And I feel that out of date, in my opinion, adage of you need to wear sunscreen unless it's dark out is very belittling. I feel that it comes from this attitude of you're too dumb to figure out when you've had too much sun. So just put this chemical on your skin. And I don't say chemical like zinc is a chemical, water is a chemical, right? So you're going to put this potentially natural but chemical on your skin to always block yourself from the life force because you don't have the means to figure out when you've had too much. I don't agree with that. I think you're smarter than that. So there's my little soapbox on the sun. Have to throw that in there when we're talking about sun damage on the skin because excess sun exposure can cause damage. And when the melanin production is happening, which melanin production is not a bad thing, but melanogenesis starts with the pituitary gland. The pituitary gland is this pea-sized gland that's at the base of your brain, and it produces a number of hormones that are going to affect our body in different ways. So when the sun enters our eyes and also touches our skin, it is sending a domino effect to the pituitary gland to produce what are called melanin stimulating hormones. So this hormone attaches to a receptor on skin cells that are called melanocytes, and melanocytes are the cells that produce melanin, that pigment, which is like a little granule that gets transferred into other skin cells called the keratinocytes, which we talked about. So that's one way. That's when melanogenesis starts. Another way that we can produce excess pigment is at the site of injury. If you have a breakout, or if you're picking at your skin, or even if you get waxed and it tears the skin, now you have a site of injury. And to protect our skin cells, our body is now going to produce melanin. Remember, its job is just to protect the nucleus of that cell from damage. So in both cases, we've got sun and then we've got injury. In both of these cases, inside of those melanocytes, those pigment producing cells, little pod-like structures called melanosomes begin producing melanin, which is again that granule of pigment from an amino acid called tyrosine with the help of an enzyme called tyrosinase. I'm hoping that your eyes have not glazed over. I can feel it. The reason that I'm getting this technical is because I want to later on in the episode talk a little bit about this enzyme tyrosinase, because there are actually ingredients that you can apply to your skin that are going to inhibit tyrosinase. So we've got melanin, it's been produced inside of the melanin producing cells, and then they are going to move along and be distributed into those skin cells that I talked about, which are called keratinocytes. So the reason that I'm telling you about keratinocytes is because they're a very specific type of skin cell. They move from the bottom layer of your skin all the way up to the surface. So they're moving through 5 layers of skin, and they're basically transforming as they move up to the surface. At the bottom, they're like plump, juicy grape cells. And as they move up, they flatten out and dry out. And at the very surface, they are going to slough off at the end when they're ready, hopefully. As a holistic esthetician, my goal is to only have those cells slough off when they're ready. And we're going to talk about this in just a minute with exfoliation, because that melanin pigment has been put into the keratinocyte and it's going to travel up to the surface, and things can slow that travel time down. That's called our skin cell turnover. And in healthy skin, the time from that grape cell to come all the way up to the top and become basically like a cornflake flattened out cell at the very top and then slough off is about 30 days. And as we age, that's going to slow down. There are other things that can slow that down, but in healthy skin, it's about 30 days. And the purpose of exfoliating in order to reduce hyperpigmentation is to increase that skin cell turnover. So keep that in mind. I'll be talking more about skin cell turnover as we move through the episode, but I think that it's really important as a consumer that you understand that's why there's such a push for so much exfoliation. And I want to talk a little later on about why I'm not a fan of that. And now I want to move on to melasma. Melasma is different than post-inflammatory hyperpigmentation. Melasma is generally a little bit more difficult to fade and to reduce than the post-inflammatory hyperpigmentation because of a couple of different factors. Melasma can actually dip down, that pigment can dip down into the lower layers of our skin. So the ones that I've been talking about so far are our epidermis, which is like our surface layers, and then below that we have our dermis. And in the dermis, the cells do not go through that phase of going from a plump grape and then turning into a cornflake and then sloughing off of the skin. In the dermis, they're just going to hang out there. Another reason is that melasma can be hormonal if we're not actually addressing why the hormones are sending those signals. Then it is going to potentially come back. With post-inflammatory hyperpigmentation, you can stop the inflammatory things, whatever it is that you're doing that's causing the inflammation. So what causes melasma? Estrogen is going to increase the activity of melanocytes, and it does this by enhancing the expression of the genes involved in the melanin synthesis, such as those encoding that enzyme tyrosinase that I talked about before. So when we have an increase in estrogen, it can also increase the skin's sensitivity to UV radiation, leading to increased melanin production and that development of pigment. So when do we see increases of estrogen? During pregnancy, estrogen levels rise significantly to support the development of the fetus. Hormonal birth control can increase estrogen levels. And then, of course, there are xenoestrogens, which are synthetic chemicals that mimic estrogen and can definitely affect the body's natural hormone process. So you will find xenoestrogens in plastics, in pesticides that are sprayed all over our food. They are found in non-organic dairy products, in farmed fish, in the fat of conventionally raised meat. They're found in household cleaners, especially antibacterial household cleaners. They are released into our water system. They're in my guilty pleasure, which is leggings. A lot of our leggings are basically made of plastic. And I don't say all of these things where xenoestrogens are found to scare you or to make you think, well, it's in everything, so why even bother? I'm just saying it's very interesting that all of these other factors can be contributing to melasma, and look at where we have control over things, control that and let the rest go, because stressing out about this stuff isn't going to help you either. I just think that it's important that there's awareness. And then melasma has a genetic component. Over 40% of people who have melasma have relatives with the condition as well. And then thyroid disease may also be a contributor to melasma, because imbalances in thyroid hormones can lead to increased skin sensitivity and pigment change as well. It can be hard to tell which is melasma and which is post-inflammatory hyperpigmentation. Melasma is often thought of as like the pregnancy mask that you'll get kind of in the center of your face during pregnancy, or also from birth control. Melasma can also appear on the cheeks, on the forehead. It's often larger patches. It's more common in women than men. And of course, if you notice that you got a darker area after a breakout, you can be pretty sure that that's probably post-inflammatory hyperpigmentation, versus if you know that this appeared after you were pregnant or after you were on birth control or some type of a hormone stimulating pharmaceutical, you may be able to tell that it was melasma. But regardless of what type of pigmentation it is, there are factors that can contribute to our photosensitivity, which will make both types of hyperpigmentation more prominent. So the first is synthetic fragrance. It blows my mind that there is synthetic fragrance added to skincare because it makes us more photosensitive. It blows my mind even further that there are sunblocks with fragrance in them. So you always want to check your ingredient deck for the word fragrance. It can sometimes also be listed as perfume. And this is always the first red flag for me. If I see a product that has that, I'm never going to buy anything from that brand, most likely, because I just don't trust their formulations. The next one is actually essential oils. So it doesn't have to be a synthetic fragrance to be photosensitizing. Essential oils, especially lemon, bergamot. There are a certain type of bergamot that is called FCF bergamot, and that one is not photosensitizing, but if it doesn't have that FCF next to it, it is photosensitizing. Lime, grapefruit, these are all going to make you more sensitive to the sun. And essential oils in general, it's a nuanced topic. I did a whole episode, so if you want to dive in with me deeper onto that, you can go check that out. But moving on, more things that can contribute to increased sensitivity to the sun include some blood pressure medications, some antibiotics, steroids, disinfectants, and antiseptics. And then the next contributors to hyperpigmentation aren't necessarily because they make us more photosensitive. They are just additional contributors that are important to think about. The first is vitamin A deficiency. A vitamin A deficiency can lead to hyperpigmentation because it plays such an essential role in our skin cell repair and overall skin health. Vitamin A is involved in the regulation of melanin production, can influence the activity of those melanocytes and help to normalize and maintain regular melanin synthesis. And a vitamin A deficiency can lead to the dysregulation of the melanocyte activity. The next is vitamin C deficiency. So vitamin C is a potent antioxidant, and it's an inhibitor of that enzyme that we talked about earlier called tyrosinase, which is the key enzyme involved in the pigment production. Deficiency of vitamin C can lead to an increase in melanin production and consequently hyperpigmentation. So I'm a big fan of topical application of vitamin C for the skin because our other organs are going to take the vitamin C that we ingest internally first. And so, of course, vitamin C rich diets are going to be really helpful to your skin, but in addition to that, applying it topically is really helpful. Next is liver dysfunction. Liver dysfunction can lead to hyperpigmentation through several mechanisms like hormone imbalance, because our liver is responsible for breaking down and getting old hormones out of our body. Also, the accumulation of toxins, increased oxidative stress, chronic inflammation, nutrient deficiencies, and metabolic changes. So all of these factors can contribute to the overproduction of melanin. And then finally, an essential fatty acid deficiency. So there are several factors here. One is that essential fatty acids help to reduce inflammation. They help with antioxidant support, and then also essential fatty acids help with the distribution. So going back to when I talked about the cells that make the melanin, the melanocyte, those cells have these little octopus arms that kind of come up into the other skin cells and distribute them into those other skin cells. But we need enough essential fatty acids so that those octopus arms are flexible and strong. And when they're not, they actually will just produce clusters of those melanin pigments in certain areas. Okay, so now I've outlined everything that can contribute to hyperpigmentation. And it was a lot of things, a lot more than just sitting out in the sun too long, right? So this will probably tell you why I like to look at this through a holistic lens, because there's so many factors here. I really like to take a holistic approach because of a philosophy that I practice called corneotherapy. So corneotherapy, when those skin cells go from being a grape cell at the bottom, that big, fat, plumpy, juicy grape, and then they transform into that flat cornflake at the surface, those flat cornflakes are called corneocytes. They're the surface layer of our skin. Corneotherapy is all about the study and support of those cornflake cells, the corneocytes. Corneotherapy shows us that the outer layers of our skin are part of our built-in protection from the environment. It supports the prevention of hyperpigmentation by strengthening the cells lower down in the skin. And this is where overexfoliation comes in. So conventional beauty will tell you that those cornflake cells have no purpose. They're dead, they're innate. We should hydrofacial them off. We should microderm them away. We should chemical peel them away. But actually, These old grandfather cells at the very top, these cornflakes, are there to support the bottom layers by communicating to them, hey, here's what's going on up here. Here's how you can prepare your best by the time you come up to the top. Instead, when we're just taking those old grandfather cells off, cells in the lower layer, specifically this layer that we have that's called our spinosum layer. This is where all of the interaction of those melanocytes takes place. This is where those octopus dendrites actually transfer the melanin into those other cells, the keratinocytes. It's all happening in a layer called the spinosum layer, which is down deeper in the skin. So when we're excessively exfoliating, removing those grandfather cornflake cells at the top, we are now forcing those younger cells to come up prematurely, and now they are potentially dysfunctional. Okay, and then I'm just going to say one more technical thing, and then we're going to move into things that you can do about hyperpigmentation. But I do just want to mention that the microbiome on the surface, it lives throughout the skin, but we've got little microbes on the surface, and their job is to protect your skin and make it less sensitive to the sun. And when we are using a hydrofacial treatment, when we are chemical peeling, or even if you're doing like a lactic acid toner 3 times a week, you're just making your skin more sensitive to the sun. So we're doing the thing that we're trying to avoid, and then we're paying money to do that. All right, let's talk about some holistic modalities and ingredients that I am a big fan of for reducing and preventing hyperpigmentation. So first up is modalities. I love lymphatic drainage. This is a slow and steady wins the race approach. That is how I approach all skincare. I'm a big fan of slow beauty. We do not need to blast things away because it's not going to be as effective. A longer lasting approach is a slow and steady wins the race approach. Next up is face cupping. So the mild suction that's created by face cupping is a controlled micro trauma on your skin. It's like a little tiny micro wound as it's creating that suction. It's pulling the skin, and this is going to encourage a healthy healing process. The stimulation can accelerate that skin cell turnover to help naturally shed pigmented and damaged cells. Next up is red light therapy. This is a fantastic option that uses specific wavelengths of light to penetrate and stimulate cellular repair. It's going to accelerate that cellular turnover without taking those cornflake cells away prematurely. Finally, the last modality I want to talk about, and that's microneedling. I'm going to do an entire episode within the next couple of weeks here about my approach to microneedling and why it fits into my skincare philosophy. But microneedling is a procedure where tiny needles create micro injuries in the skin, and this controlled wound is going to trigger our body's natural healing response, which is going to encourage regeneration. It's also going to encourage healthy skin cell turnover to release damaged cells. And then it also helps to break up and disperse excess pigment granules. This can even out skin tone over time, and it's going to improve our cell-to-cell communications. When we have unhealthy cellular communication, we are going to have a breakdown in all of these appropriate processes that we want. So those are the modalities. The next thing I want to talk about is things that you can apply to your skin, like products and ingredients that can be helpful. First up, I already talked about a little bit, was vitamin C. So there are many things that deplete our vitamin C. Smoking, excess sun exposure, illness, stress, chlorine exposure. So very interesting that we're swimming in chlorine all the time, and then we are getting hyperpigmentation in the summer. And vitamin C is an inhibitor for that enzyme tyrosinase. I really love topical vitamin C. I'm a big fan of shelf-stable, oil-soluble vitamin Cs. My favorite for that, I carry the Live Botanical First Light Brightening Oil Serum. Vitamin C can oxidize very easily. Vitamin C that has gone rancid is so much more damaging to the skin than any help that it's providing. So you really want to make sure that you have a shelf-stable vitamin C. Whole plant vitamin C is going to be extremely stable. So that looks like hibiscus, rosehip. Laurel makes beautiful products that have whole plant vitamin C. My two favorites are the Sun Serum and the Antioxidant Serum. Sun Serum is my favorite for reducing and preventing sun damage. Next is polyphenols. So these are the largest category of botanical antioxidants. Polyphenols that are exceptionally helpful for hyperpigmentation include EGCG, that's found in green tea. I love a matcha mask. Ferulic acid is another beautiful polyphenol for hyperpigmentation. This can be found in all kinds of different plants like coffee, grapes, pineapple, tomato, apple. You'll find a lot of these extracts in skincare, but then there are also specific ferulic acid serums as well. Caffeic acid found in lemon balm and echinacea is a beautiful polyphenol for hyperpigmentation. Resveratrol, which is generally extracted for skincare from Japanese knotweed, is another great polyphenol. We talked about the enzyme tyrosinase and how there are ingredients that are tyrosinase inhibitors. Tyrosinase inhibiting ingredients that I really love include licorice root, lady's mantle, yarrow, bilberry extract. Niacinamide is a beautiful tyrosinase inhibitor. Vitamin C, again, is a tyrosinase inhibitor. And then my final ingredient that I want to talk about are pea and quinoa peptides. They reduce discoloration in the skin because they help to downregulate the expression of tyrosinase. So they're not directly a tyrosinase inhibitor, but they downregulate it, ultimately leading to less melanin being produced. And I love that Live Botanicals has a beautiful serum called Solar Return. This one is for hyperpigmentation and sun-damaged skin. It also has mothbean, which is a natural alternative to retinol. I love that hydrating serum. Lifestyle is going to play an important factor. We've talked a lot about things that can cause hyperpigmentation, but with our lifestyle, making sure that we're eating diets that are rich in omega-3 fatty acids, high antioxidant diets. So eating lots of fruit and vegetable, eating the rainbow, reducing our intake of inflammatory foods, inflammatory seed oils, specifically ultra-processed foods. These all increase oxidative stress in our body. Eating a diet rich in carotenoids is also super supportive. So this is going to be produce that is yellow, orange, and I think about this with a house plant. So if a house plant is in the sun for too long, or you've got that one leaf that's exposed to too much sun, it's going to turn yellow. This is because it has increased its carotenoid content. It's reduced its chlorophyll to protect itself from sun damage. We can use this intuitive damage protection by eating foods that are high in carotenoids. This is going to include things like red, yellow, orange bell peppers, carrots, tomatoes, watermelon, yams, cantaloupe, butternut squash, oranges, apricots. Practicing safe and responsible sun habits when you are in the sun to receive sunlight appropriately without burning and without overexposure to the sun. Reducing alcohol intake and other activities that put stress on the body. I want to end by quickly talking about the potential emotional or energetic contributors to hyperpigmentation. I talked about this in the slow beauty episode, but I wanted to touch on it again in this episode. So we know that this is the result of the body sensing some type of threat or injury, and then it's putting melanin into the cells to protect them from DNA damage, like little umbrellas. It's a coping mechanism, right? So think about that emotionally. It may emotionally represent trying to hold on to something, a resistance to change, a manifestation of trying to hold on to control. The appearance of hyperpigmentation may indicate an effort to maintain stability or consistency in your life. It can reflect a struggle to keep things as they are. Just as hyperpigmentation is that physical shield against sun damage, it can also represent an emotional shield, a subconscious effort to protect yourself from emotional harm or emotional trauma. So something to think about. I'm not saying that that's true with everyone, but I do very much believe that if we get quiet with ourselves, there are emotional aspects to every imbalance that is presenting itself physically. All right, today we discussed what causes hyperpigmentation, what makes it worse, holistic modalities, ingredients, lifestyle factors, and then also we talked about the emotional factors. I hope that this was helpful to you. If you've made it this far, please share it with someone else who might find it interesting, who it may be helpful for. Hyperpigmentation can be so frustrating, and I don't think that all of these factors get talked about enough. So please share it. I'm going to be back next week with an interview that I am very excited to share with you. So until then, be well. You've been listening to Skin, Earth, Vitality. If you liked what you heard today, consider giving me a 5-star rating. It helps other people just like you find the show. You can shop products and find all of my offerings on my website, stratumaesthetics.com, and follow me on my social channels at Stratum Aesthetics.